This is the Stanley number 80. It is a scraper plane created by Stanley for cabinet scraping. It's also used to do things like fair the hull of a boat. It has a blade in it which is very thick, and unlike most scraper blades, you can't bend it the same way. This is thick and solid steel. So it's not really a scraper in so much as it is a plane. Whereas if you've made a scraper blade, and I'll use this metal ruler for demonstration, scraper blade, when you push, you're able to bend it. And as you bend it, you're able to then concentrate the center section on your timber and scrape very controlled where you want it to scrape. Of course, there's a couple of differences between how you manage this blade and how you manage this blade. With a scraper blade, you're going to file the edge flat. You're then going to use a burnishing tool to push this edge down by burnishing across there with your burnishing tool. Now, when I say burnishing tool, it could be the back end of a hardened drill bit or something. But you're pushing that burr down so that when you hold the blade at an angle on the workpiece, and you can change the angle depending on what's going to cut better, and you're pushing forward, it's this section here that's cutting, causing curls to come off in that fashion. When you use a scraper plane, you're pushing it through this way with your thumbs on the back here. The blade itself sits in on an angle pointing backwards, and you think, okay, that's the same as a scraper. But the way you handle this blade is you cut it on a 45-degree angle. When you file it on a 40-degree angle, and you probably created a burr here as you're filing, what you do is you get your burnishing tool and you push flat against this face, and you push that burr back into the blade and remelt it into the metal the best you can. And that creates a nice flat surface, but it pushes this metal back into it like folded metal of say a sword or something like that. Once you've done that, you will then burnish pushing this way. And by pushing on it this way and burnishing it down, what you end up with is, from your starting point, this gets pushed out to a very fine point there, and it's a polished point. So it's like a well prepped plain blade. It's a very fine point, very neat point. So that's your cutting edge. Now, because you're putting it in with this towards the back of the plane and this towards the front of the plane, that is touching your timber, and you get your curls come through there. So as it cuts through the timber, it's coming through there. Now, of course, to push this by hand, as we've demonstrated, is quite difficult. So to load it, you've got a plate in the back. You loosen these couple of screws off, and you face the back of the bevel, so the high point, towards the back of the plane, so that your burr's pointing forward. Flat on the surface, you just push it down evenly and screw these in to clamp that on. And that clamps your blade in place. Now, at the moment, it's nice and flat. And if I was to scrape that, I'm going to get a little bit of catch, but not really much. But it will be a little bit. That is not going to do much at all. You're generally going to use it on hard timber, and when you need to actually scrape, you twist this on, and just a little bit at a time. And as you twist this on, it's creating the curve that you would normally get in a scraper plane when you push your thumbs in. That's creating it there, pushing the middle section of this cutting piece down through the slot on the bottom of the plane. So it protrudes a little bit more here. And the more you tighten it, the more this gets pushed out this way. And if I hold it there, it's pushing it on this plane out. So, or actually a bit more of that plane. So the more it pushes it forward, the more it sticks out of the bottom of the plane, and the more you'll cut. So you can fine tune it by screwing this to get the shaving that you want. And as you can tell, it's actually catching a lot more just with that little amount of screwing that I've done of that back screw. And it'll be catching right in the middle there. Standard use, palms down on either side, pressing downwards to get that face nice and registered on your timber, and your thumbs behind to give you control, and you push forward. And it's nice, even pushes through, and you'll get some nice, beautiful, even curls coming out of the front here, leaving a very, very silky, shiny surface behind if your blade's been prepped well. And quite often you'll find wooden boat construction. This is used more often than a card scraper, simply because it protects your thumbs, and you get a very consistent result out of this, and it takes very fine shavings and fares the bottom of the boat very nicely. This particular edition is a sweetheart one. Both the blade and the plate have markings of SW in the heart imprinted on those. There is nothing on the plane itself other than standard number 80 Stanley. So there's no indication on the plane itself that it is sweetheart. It is on the bar and on the plate. So these, of course, both of them are collector's pieces in that right. But this doesn't really add any value to it of any great deal. You will find these reasonably easy, or at least you used to, unless they've all locked away in people's collections now. When I was looking for these, SW of these were floating around quite frequently, and they were the same price as you would find any of the others. I have found this to be a fantastic finishing plane on some of my work of varying natures, especially boxes, etc. It will cut through nicely any orientation of timber, whether it's got knots in it, whether it's burl, reversing grain, end grain, it doesn't matter. It's going to just take that smallest slither off any of it and cut through very nicely once you've prepared that blade properly. There is a very, very good video by Paul Sellers on exactly how to achieve this. Well worth watching, because it's all in the blade prep that the results come from with regards to this plane. So that's the number 80. Whether you are purchasing to use or collect, happy hunting.